Ben was no ordinary child. Born in a small, vibrant town tucked away in the heart of the countryside, his early years were marked by hardship, resilience, and an unquenchable passion for art. His mother, a single parent, worked long hours as a nurse, barely making ends meet. Yet, she always found time to nurture Ben's creative spirit, encouraging him to see the beauty in the mundane. Ben's fascination with art began when he was just 5 years old. His first tools were not fancy brushes or premium paints, but charcoal pieces and scraps of paper salvaged from his mother's workplace. His early drawings depicted the world he saw, the cracked sidewalks of his neighborhood, the lively marketplace where people bartered for produce, and the tired but hopeful faces of the community. Even at a young age, Ben's work carried an emotional depth that left people in awe. Despite his talent, Ben's journey was fraught with challenges. Growing up in a predominantly underserved community, resources for nurturing creative talents were scarce. Teachers praised his skills, but often told him to focus on practical career paths, reminding him that art doesn't pay the bills. Discrimination also played a significant role in shaping his early experiences. There were moments when Ben's artwork was ignored at school competitions simply because of who he was. Still, his spirit remained unbroken. He found solace in painting late into the night, creating vibrant pieces that told stories of hope, struggle, and triumph. Ben's life in the city. As Ben grew older, his desire to chase his dreams became unstoppable. At 20, armed with a suitcase, a modest savings account, and an unshakable belief in his talent, he moved to the bustling city of Arden, a place famed for its thriving art scene but notorious for its competitiveness. Life in the city was far from easy. Ben's tiny studio apartment in a crumbling building barely accommodated his canvases and supplies. The walls were thin, and the sounds of the city, sirens, footsteps, and chatter, became his constant companions. To afford rent and art supplies, Ben took on a series of grueling odd jobs. By day, he worked as a delivery driver, a dishwasher, and sometimes even a street vendor. By night, he poured his heart into his artwork, often working until dawn. His hands were perpetually stained with paint, a testament to his relentless dedication. Despite his struggles, Ben found inspiration in the city's diversity. The streets teemed with people from all walks of life, each carrying stories that fueled his creativity. He painted scenes of street performers, elderly couples walking hand in hand, and children playing in graffiti-covered alleys. Each piece reflected his belief that beauty existed even in life's chaos. The breakthrough artwork. One fateful evening, after months of relentless effort, Ben created what he believed to be his magnum opus. Titled Roots of Triumph, the painting was a vivid tapestry of his experiences and identity. It depicted a massive tree with deep, winding roots symbolizing his heritage and struggles. The tree's branches reached upward, intertwining with vibrant symbols of hope, birds, stars, and abstract patterns of light. The piece was a celebration of resilience and a tribute to those who had supported him along the way. Ben knew he had created something special. He could feel it in the way his heart raced every time he looked at the painting. He was convinced that Roots of Triumph had the power to resonate with others, to tell a story that transcended barriers. With renewed confidence, Ben began reaching out to galleries across the city. He wrote heartfelt letters, attached high-quality photographs of his work, and personally visited several venues. However, his efforts were met with polite but firm rejections. "Your style doesn't fit our current curation," one gallery said. "We're fully booked for the season," claimed another. Some gallery owners didn't even bother responding. For Ben, each rejection felt like a punch to the gut, but he refused to give up. The first encounter with the gallery owner. One day, Ben heard about a prestigious gallery in Arden's upscale district. The gallery, owned by a man named Mr. Grant, was known for hosting high-profile exhibitions and attracting wealthy collectors. It was a place where artists dreamed of being featured, a guaranteed ticket to fame and fortune. Despite the gallery's reputation for exclusivity, Ben decided to take a chance. When Ben entered the gallery, he was immediately struck by its grandeur. The space was sleek and modern, with high ceilings and polished marble floors. Exquisite paintings lined the walls, each accompanied by a gold-plated plaque bearing the artist's name. The air smelled faintly of expensive cologne and freshly brewed coffee, and the soft hum of classical music played in the background. Ben approached the reception desk, clutching his portfolio tightly. "Excuse me," he said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I'm an artist, and I was hoping to speak with Mr. Grant about showcasing my work." The receptionist raised an eyebrow, giving Ben a once-over. Dressed in his paint-splattered jeans and a worn-out jacket, he looked out of place amidst the gallery's opulence. She hesitated before picking up the phone to inform Mr. Grant. Minutes later, a tall, middle-aged man with perfectly styled hair and a tailored suit approached. His name was Mr. Grant, and his demeanor radiated arrogance. He extended a hand but didn't bother hiding his disinterest as he looked at Ben. "You're the artist?" Mr. Grant asked, his tone laced with skepticism. "Yes, sir," Ben replied, handing over his portfolio. "I brought samples of my work. I believe my art could be a valuable addition to your gallery." Mr. Grant flipped through the pages with a dismissive expression, occasionally muttering under his breath. When he reached the page showcasing Roots of Triumph, he paused briefly but quickly moved on as if unimpressed. Finally, he closed the portfolio and handed it back to Ben. "Listen," he began, his voice condescending, "I've been in this business for decades, and I can tell you this, art isn't just about talent. It's about connections, marketability, and knowing what sells. Your work, well, it's raw, amateur at best. It lacks the sophistication our clients expect." Ben's heart sank, but he stood his ground. "I believe my work has something unique to offer. If you could give me a chance." Mr. Grant cut him off with a laugh. "A chance? Do you know how many artists walk in here asking for a chance? Thousands. And most of them have more to show than this." He gestured vaguely toward the portfolio. "My advice? Stick to street fairs. Maybe you'll find someone who appreciates it there." The words stung, but Ben refused to let them define him. He walked out of the gallery with his head held high, silently vowing to prove Mr. Grant wrong. Little did the gallery owner know, the artist he had just dismissed would soon become a force to be reckoned with. The sting of Mr. Grant's dismissive words lingered in Ben's mind long after he left the gallery. Yet, that humiliation didn't extinguish his fire, it only made it burn brighter. Ben was determined to prove his worth, not to Mr. Grant, but to himself and the world that overlooked him. He immersed himself in his art like never before, pouring every ounce of emotion into his canvases. His small, dimly lit studio became a sanctuary where his frustrations transformed into powerful, evocative creations. Night after night, Ben worked tirelessly. He painted vivid depictions of resilience, identity, and hope, each piece telling a story that was deeply personal yet universally relatable. His art became a reflection of his journey, raw, unapologetic, and full of soul. He wasn't painting for galleries or critics anymore, he was painting for those who could see the world through his eyes. When he wasn't painting, Ben was out on the streets, displaying his work at local fairs, pop-up exhibits, and even on sidewalks. He endured long days standing in the sun, rain, and cold, trying to catch the attention of passers-by. Many people stopped to admire his art, but few could afford to buy it. Still, every compliment and word of encouragement fueled his drive to keep going. A mysterious encounter. One Saturday afternoon, Ben set up a modest street exhibit in a bustling part of the city. His booth was simple, just a few easels and a folding table holding his smaller pieces. He carefully arranged his artwork, hoping to catch the eye of someone who truly understood the stories behind the colors and brushstrokes. As the day wore on, a well-dressed man in his early 60s strolled by. He had an air of sophistication, wearing a tailored suit and carrying a cane with a silver handle. His name was Mr. Carter, though Ben wouldn't know that yet. Something about Ben's art stopped Mr. Carter in his tracks. He tilted his head, studying a painting of a young boy reaching for the sky, his outstretched hand blending into a burst of light. "This is remarkable," Mr. Carter said, his voice deep and resonant. Ben, startled by the attention, turned to face him. "Thank you," Ben replied cautiously. "That piece is called Dreamer's Ascent. It's about believing in possibilities, even when the world tells you otherwise." Mr. Carter nodded thoughtfully. "And the artist? What's his story?" Ben hesitated for a moment before sharing his journey, the struggles of his childhood, his relentless pursuit of art, and the many rejections he had faced. He spoke not with bitterness, but with a quiet strength that came from enduring hardships without losing hope. Mr. Carter listened intently, his piercing blue eyes fixed on Ben. "You have a rare gift," he said finally. "Your art has soul, and that's something money can't buy. I'd like to purchase a few pieces." The unexpected opportunity. Ben's heart raced as Mr. Carter selected several paintings, including Dreamer's Ascent and Roots of Triumph. It was the largest sale Ben had ever made. But Mr. Carter wasn't finished. "I'd also like to sponsor you," he said, handing Ben a business card. "Come to my office on Monday. I have connections in the art world, and I think your work deserves a larger audience." For a moment, Ben was speechless. Opportunities like this were rare, especially for someone like him. "I don't know how to thank you," he finally said. "Just keep creating," Mr. Carter replied with a smile. True to his word, Mr. Carter introduced Ben to an elite circle of art collectors, curators, and influencers. He hosted a private showcase of Ben's work at his sprawling estate, inviting some of the most influential people in the industry. For the first time, Ben's art was displayed in a space that matched its brilliance, surrounded by people who appreciated its depth. The rise to fame. The private showcase was a resounding success. Ben's pieces sold for amounts he could scarcely believe, and word of his talent spread like wildfire. Within weeks, his name began appearing in art blogs, and his paintings were featured in high-profile exhibitions. One day, he received a call from Art Vista, a renowned magazine known for spotlighting emerging talent. They wanted to feature Ben in their upcoming issue. The feature was a turning point. The magazine highlighted Ben's journey, his struggles, and the emotional depth of his work. Photos of Roots of Triumph and other pieces accompanied the article, and Ben's story resonated with readers worldwide. Orders for his paintings poured in, and his work began commanding six-figure prices. For the first time in his life, Ben felt financially secure. He upgraded his studio, investing in better tools and a larger space where he could fully explore his creativity. Despite his success, he remained humble, remembering the countless nights he spent painting by the dim light of a desk lamp. Ben's secret plan. Though Ben's life had transformed, he hadn't forgotten the sting of Mr. Grant's rejection. The gallery owner's words still echoed in his mind, not as a source of pain but as a reminder of how far he had come. With his newfound wealth and connections, Ben devised a plan to return to Mr. Grant's gallery, not as a struggling artist but as someone who could buy the entire establishment if he chose to. Ben kept his plan a secret, even from Mr. Carter. He wanted the moment to be purely his, a personal triumph that would close the chapter of his struggles. Over the following weeks, he quietly researched the gallery's operations, its clientele, and its reputation in the art world. He learned that Mr. Grant's gallery was struggling financially, a fact that added a layer of irony to Ben's impending visit. With every step of his preparation, Ben's anticipation grew. This wasn't about revenge or rubbing his success in Mr. Grant's face. It was about reclaiming his dignity and showing that talent, perseverance, and integrity could triumph over arrogance and prejudice. As the day of the visit approached, Ben carefully selected the outfit he would wear. It was simple yet elegant, a reflection of his humility and success. He also chose a few pieces from his latest collection to bring along, each one a testament to his journey. Ben's heart raced as he approached the gallery's doors, the same doors he had walked through months ago with nothing but hope and determination. This time, he was returning not as a rejected artist but as someone who had earned his place in the art world. And he was ready to show Mr. Grant, and himself, that dreams, no matter how impossible they seem, can come true with perseverance and passion. The day had finally arrived. Ben stood outside Mr. Grant's gallery, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. The sleek exterior of the gallery looked just as intimidating as he remembered, with its large glass windows showcasing curated artwork and the bold, gold-lettered sign announcing its name. But this time, Ben wasn't the same struggling artist who had walked through those doors months ago. He adjusted his modest blazer, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. The interior of the gallery was just as opulent as Ben recalled, with marble floors gleaming under soft lighting and walls adorned with an array of contemporary art. The air smelled faintly of luxury, expensive cologne and freshly brewed espresso. Behind the reception desk, a young assistant greeted Ben with a polite but indifferent smile. "I'm here to inquire about purchasing the gallery," Ben said, his tone calm but confident. The assistant's eyes widened slightly before she picked up the phone to notify Mr. Grant. Moments later, the man himself appeared, his tailored suit as impeccable as ever. Mr. Grant's expression immediately shifted to one of polished charm when he saw Ben, not recognizing him from their previous encounter. "Good afternoon," Mr. Grant said, extending a hand. "I'm Edward Grant, the owner of this establishment. I hear you're interested in acquiring the gallery?" Ben shook his hand firmly. "That's correct. My name is Ben." He purposely omitted his last name, letting Mr. Grant's memory remain untouched for the moment. "I've been looking for an investment opportunity, and your gallery caught my attention." Mr. Grant's eyes gleamed with interest. "Well, you've come to the right place. This gallery is the pinnacle of art culture in the city. We only display the finest works by renowned artists. Our clientele includes some of the most affluent collectors in the world." Ben nodded, keeping his expression neutral. "I'd like to learn more about your operations. Perhaps a private tour?" "Of course," Mr. Grant said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He motioned for Ben to follow him. The offer to buy the gallery. As Mr. Grant led Ben through the gallery, he launched into a well-rehearsed monologue about the establishment's prestige. He spoke of the gallery's history, its exclusivity, and its dedication to curating only the best. His tone was condescending, as if he believed Ben needed convincing of the gallery's worth. "We pride ourselves on setting high standards," Mr. Grant said, gesturing to a wall of abstract paintings. "It's not just about talent, it's about market appeal and the artist's reputation. That's why we don't waste time on amateurs or unknowns. They simply don't have what it takes to meet our criteria." Ben bit back a smile, allowing Mr. Grant to continue digging his own hole. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on him. Here was the same man who had dismissed him outright, now pitching the gallery as a prime investment opportunity. As they walked, Ben's eyes scanned the artwork on display. He recognized some of the pieces as works by celebrated artists, but one painting in particular caught his attention. It was one of his own, a vibrant, emotional piece he had sold to Mr. Carter months ago. The title, "Eternal Bloom," was listed on a gold plaque, but the artist's name was replaced with a pseudonym. Ben stopped in front of the painting, his heart racing. "This one," he said, pointing to it. "It's quite striking. Tell me about the artist." "The art exhibition." Mr. Grant's face lit up as he stepped closer to the painting. "Ah, yes, this piece is by an emerging talent who prefers to remain anonymous. It's one of our most talked about works. The depth of emotion, the bold use of color, it's truly exceptional, isn't it?" Ben studied the painting for a moment, his mind flooded with memories of the late night he had painted it, pouring his soul into every brushstroke. "It's remarkable," he said, his voice steady. "The artist must be quite talented." Mr. Grant nodded, oblivious to the irony. "Indeed. Pieces like this are what elevate our gallery's reputation. Collectors are willing to pay a premium for works of this caliber." Ben turned to face Mr. Grant, his expression unreadable. "I'd like to make an offer for the gallery," he said, shifting the conversation back to his original intent. "But before we proceed, there's something you should know." The big reveal. Ben took a step closer, meeting Mr. Grant's gaze directly. "Do you remember a young artist who came to you months ago, asking for a chance to showcase his work?" You told him his art was raw, amateur, and unmarketable. Mr. Grant frowned, clearly trying to recall the encounter. I meet a lot of aspiring artists, he said dismissively. I can't be expected to remember every one of them. Well, Ben said, his voice firm but calm, you're looking at him. I painted eternal bloom. I'm the artist you dismissed. The color drained from Mr. Grant's face as realization dawned. He opened his mouth to speak, but seemed at a loss for words. That's impossible, he stammered. You mean to say this is your work? That's right, Ben said, his tone unwavering. And the same goes for several other pieces in your gallery, all sold under pseudonyms through collectors you respect. Funny how much perspective changes when a name isn't attached. Mr. Grant's shock quickly gave way to embarrassment. He adjusted his tie nervously, clearly struggling to maintain his composure. I didn't realize. You didn't bother to look, Ben interrupted, his voice calm but piercing. You dismissed me because of my appearance and your assumptions. But now, my work is here, displayed in your so-called pinnacle of art culture. So, Mr. Grant, tell me, what do you think of this amateur artist now? Mr. Grant's shock and embarrassment. Mr. Grant's jaw worked as he searched for a response. The confidence and arrogance that had defined him earlier were gone, replaced by a mixture of shame and disbelief. I made a mistake, he admitted finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Your work is extraordinary. I see that now. Ben nodded, his expression unreadable. Mistakes can be valuable, Mr. Grant. They teach us lessons, if we're willing to learn from them. With that, Ben turned his attention back to the painting. For a moment, silence filled the room, the weight of the revelation hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Ben spoke again, his voice softer this time. I'm still interested in purchasing the gallery. But if I do, things will change. This space will become a place where all artists, regardless of their background or reputation, are given a chance to shine. Mr. Grant nodded, humbled and subdued. If that's your vision, he said quietly, then perhaps it's time for a change. Ben extended a hand, signaling the beginning of a new chapter, not just for the gallery, but for the art world it represented. Mr. Grant hesitated for a moment before taking it, sealing the deal that would transform both their lives forever. The air in the gallery's private office was heavy with tension as Ben and Mr. Grant sat across from each other at a polished oak table. Between them lay a proposal that would not only change the gallery's future but also shake up the art world as a whole. For Mr. Grant, it was an unexpected turn of events. For Ben, it was the culmination of years of struggle and resilience. I'm prepared to make a fair offer for the gallery, Ben began, his tone calm but firm. But my purchase comes with conditions. Mr. Grant, visibly uncomfortable, adjusted his tie and leaned forward. Conditions? He asked cautiously. What kind of conditions? Ben folded his hands on the table and met Mr. Grant's gaze. This gallery has long been a symbol of exclusivity, catering to a narrow circle of artists and collectors. That's going to change. If I take ownership, the gallery will become a space for underrepresented artists, those who are often overlooked because of their background, appearance, or lack of connections. Mr. Grant's brow furrowed, but he said nothing, allowing Ben to continue. I also want the gallery to host an exhibition dedicated entirely to diverse talent, Ben added. We'll feature works from emerging artists who deserve a platform, just as I once did. The gallery will no longer be a gatekeeper of privilege, it will be a bridge to opportunity. The words hung in the air, their weight undeniable. Mr. Grant, whose reputation was already tarnished in Ben's eyes, understood the gravity of the situation. He was facing not just a financial transaction but a moral reckoning. And if I refuse? Mr. Grant asked, though his voice lacked the defiance it once carried. You won't, Ben replied confidently. Because you know this gallery can't survive without change. Its exclusivity may have worked in the past, but the art world is evolving. People want authenticity, representation, and stories that resonate. This is your chance to be part of that evolution. The contract signing. Reluctantly, Mr. Grant agreed to Ben's terms. Over the next few weeks, lawyers drafted contracts, ensuring every detail of Ben's vision was legally binding. As the signing date approached, Mr. Grant found himself reflecting on his past decisions. He couldn't deny that Ben's success was a direct result of perseverance, but it was also a stark reminder of the opportunities he had denied so many others. The day of the signing was both solemn and momentous. Ben arrived dressed in a tailored suit, a stark contrast to the paint-splattered clothes he had worn during their first encounter. Mr. Grant, though subdued, maintained a professional demeanor as they finalized the agreement. With a flourish of his pen, Ben signed the contract, officially becoming the new owner of the gallery. A wave of emotions washed over him: relief, pride, and an unshakable sense of purpose. For Mr. Grant, the moment was bittersweet. Though he was relinquishing control, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope for the gallery's future under Ben's leadership. Preparation for the exhibition. As the new owner, Ben wasted no time in implementing his vision. His first order of business was organizing the promised exhibition, which he titled Voices Unheard, a celebration of diversity in art. The name reflected the essence of the event, giving a platform to those who had long been silenced by the constraints of the traditional art world. Ben reached out to community art programs, universities, and independent artists, inviting them to submit their work. The response was overwhelming. Artists from all walks of life, young and old, experienced and emerging, shared pieces that told stories of identity, struggle, and triumph. Ben personally reviewed each submission, curating a collection that was as diverse in style as it was in perspective. The gallery was transformed in preparation for the exhibition. Walls were repainted to complement the vibrant artworks, and the space was redesigned to encourage interaction and dialogue. Each piece was accompanied by a brief narrative from the artist, allowing visitors to connect with the stories behind the art. As news of the exhibition spread, it garnered immense public and media attention. Articles praised Ben's vision, highlighting his journey from a rejected artist to a trailblazing gallery owner. Social media buzzed with excitement, with many expressing admiration for Ben's commitment to inclusivity. Mr. Grant's redemption arc. Throughout the process, Mr. Grant remained involved, though in a much different capacity than before. Initially, he had intended to step away entirely, believing his presence might hinder the gallery's new direction. However, Ben encouraged him to stay, emphasizing that redemption was possible for those willing to change. Under Ben's guidance, Mr. Grant began to see the value of diversity in art. He attended meetings with the featured artists, listened to their stories, and gained a deeper appreciation for perspectives he had previously ignored. The experience was humbling, forcing him to confront his biases and recognize the flaws in his previous approach. During the final stages of preparation, Mr. Grant approached Ben with a newfound sense of purpose. "I want to help," he said simply. "Not as the old gallery owner, but as someone who believes in what you're doing." Ben nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. It's never too late to start supporting the right causes. The grand opening. The day of the exhibition's grand opening was a spectacle unlike anything the gallery had seen before. Crowds gathered outside, eager to witness the historic event. The interior was alive with energy, filled with art enthusiasts, collectors, and members of the media. For many, the gallery's transformation was a symbol of progress, a reminder that change was not only possible but necessary. Ben delivered a heartfelt speech, recounting his journey and expressing gratitude to those who had supported him along the way. He emphasized the importance of representation in art, calling on the audience to continue championing underrepresented voices. Mr. Grant, standing quietly at the back of the room, listened intently. When Ben concluded his speech, the crowd erupted into applause. For the first time in his career, Mr. Grant felt a sense of pride that wasn't tied to wealth or status but to the impact the gallery was now making. A new era. The exhibition was a resounding success, both artistically and financially. Several artists featured in Voices Unheard received offers from collectors, catapulting their careers to new heights. The gallery's reputation, once steeped in exclusivity, was now synonymous with innovation and inclusivity. Ben's vision had not only revitalized the gallery but also inspired a movement within the art world. And while Mr. Grant's past could never be erased, his commitment to supporting Ben's mission proved that change was possible, even for those who had once stood in its way. As Ben stood in the gallery's main hall, surrounded by the vibrant artwork and the buzz of conversation, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This was more than a personal victory, it was the beginning of a legacy that would uplift countless others, ensuring that every voice, no matter how small, could finally be heard. The successful exhibition. The night of Voices Unheard, a celebration of diversity in art, arrived, and the atmosphere inside the gallery was electric. From the moment the doors opened, visitors flooded in, their excitement palpable as they moved from one breathtaking piece to the next. The walls were alive with color and emotion, each artwork telling a story that demanded to be seen, heard, and felt. The gallery's transformation was undeniable. Gone was the sterile, exclusive environment that once defined it. Instead, the space buzzed with energy and authenticity, filled with people from all walks of life, students, families, collectors, and first-time art enthusiasts. Each person seemed captivated by the variety of voices and perspectives represented. Artists who had never before stepped foot in such a prestigious venue now stood proudly beside their work, engaging with admirers who marveled at their talent. Many pieces were sold that very night, their prices far exceeding the expectations of their creators. The success of the exhibition wasn't just measured in sales but in the opportunities it created for the artists, who were now poised to reach new heights in their careers. Ben moved through the crowd, his heart swelling with pride as he watched the exhibition unfold. This wasn't just a celebration of art, it was a celebration of resilience, diversity, and the power of giving people a chance. Ben's speech. As the evening reached its peak, Ben stepped onto a small stage at the center of the gallery. The crowd quieted as he took the microphone, their attention focused entirely on him. He paused for a moment, taking in the sea of faces before him. This was the moment he had dreamed of, not for himself, but for everyone who had ever felt unseen. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Ben began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This exhibition is more than just a collection of art. It's a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of representation, and the belief that every voice matters." He spoke of his journey, of the struggles he had faced as a young, unknown artist, and the countless rejections that had threatened to extinguish his dreams. But he also spoke of the people who had lifted him up, like Mr. Carter, who had seen his potential when no one else did. "We all carry stories within us," Ben continued. "Stories of triumph, struggle, and hope. Tonight, those stories are on these walls, told by artists who have poured their souls into their work. These voices, these perspectives, are what make art powerful. They remind us of our shared humanity." Ben's gaze shifted toward the back of the room, where Mr. Grant stood quietly, a mix of pride and humility on his face. "I also want to take a moment to acknowledge someone who played a pivotal role in this journey," Ben said. "Mr. Grant, I know we've had our differences. But I want you to know that I hold no bitterness. Instead, I choose gratitude for the lessons I've learned and the growth we've both experienced." The crowd erupted into applause, and Mr. Grant nodded, visibly moved. Ben's decision to publicly forgive him wasn't just an act of grace, it was a powerful statement about the potential for change and the importance of letting go of resentment. Mr. Grant's transformation. For Mr. Grant, the evening was a revelation. As he walked through the gallery, mingling with artists and guests, he saw firsthand the impact of Ben's vision. He spoke with young creators who shared their struggles, their dreams, and their gratitude for the opportunity to showcase their work. Each conversation chipped away at the old beliefs that had once defined his approach to the art world. By the end of the night, Mr. Grant had made a decision. He approached Ben, his voice steady but earnest. "I want to do more," he said. "Not just for this gallery, but for the art community as a whole. If you'll have me, I'd like to work alongside you, to learn, to support, and to make amends for the opportunities one denied others." Ben smiled, extending a hand. "Welcome to the new chapter of the gallery, Mr. Grant." Ben's vision for the future. With the success of the exhibition as a foundation, Ben began planning the gallery's future. He envisioned it as more than just a venue, it would become a movement. He introduced initiatives to support underrepresented artists, including mentorship programs, scholarships, and international outreach efforts to discover hidden talent in underserved communities. One of Ben's most ambitious projects was the creation of a traveling exhibit, taking the works of emerging artists to cities and towns around the world. The goal was to bring art to places where it was least accessible, inspiring a new generation of creators. The gallery also became a hub for community engagement. Workshops, panel discussions, and interactive events were held regularly, fostering connections between artists and the public. Ben believed that art should be a shared experience, one that broke down barriers rather than building them. A quiet moment of reflection. Late that night, after the exhibition had ended and the gallery had emptied, Ben stood alone in his office. On the wall hung a portrait of his parents, a simple black and white photograph that he had framed years ago. His mother's warm smile and his father's steady gaze seemed to watch over him, a reminder of the sacrifices they had made to support his dreams. Ben stepped closer, his eyes misting with emotion. "This is for you," he whispered. "For everything you taught me about resilience, kindness, and believing in something bigger than myself." He gazed at the photograph for a long moment, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. His journey had been long and difficult, but it had brought him to this moment, a place where he could honor his roots while paving the way for others. As he turned off the lights and stepped into the quiet city night, Ben felt a deep sense of fulfillment. His legacy was just beginning, and it was one that would shine brightly, lighting the path for countless others to follow.